Hello, this is Didi speaking. Today I will talk an important topic inside a fact about the bureaucratic corruption in Indonesia. This topic is very important, and this is a part of empirical study we have. First of all, I would like to say that corruption is long existing phenomenon in human societies. It has been both empirically and theoretically proven that corruption has negative effect on a country's development or even around the world. Transparency International defines corruption as the misuse of um, public power for private gain. The term misuse can be defined by applying illegal and unethical standards. And the term private, again, related to receiving money or valuable assets, but it may also encompass increase in power or status. The adverse effect of corruption on public administrations may include, but not limited to, a lower quality of governance, poor public service provisions, or murky regulatory regimes, and shoddy policy implementations. At the societal levels, corruption may distort the allocation of resources, cause income inequality, and contribute to social unrest. A review of the Transparency International report indicates that the corruption scandals in poor developing countries are much more likely to flourish, particularly when democratic foundations are weak. As we know, such a report is the most widely used barometer of corruption worldwide. The indicators in that report aggregated information from multiple surveys and polls. Most components in that report are based on perceptions of a country experts, businessmen, about the overall level of perceptions in a given country. To our mind, this is very interesting in that report. In that report, Indonesia is perceived as one of the corrupt countries in the world. It is argued in that report that Indonesians make little or no progress in ending its corruption scandals. Indonesia actually has three big anti-corruption bodies such as a corruption eradication commissions in Indonesia broadly known as Komisi Pemberantasan Korupsi. The second, the Indonesian National Police, and the last one, the Attorney General's Office of Republic of Indonesia. Those bodies for some people of Indonesia or group of people in Indonesia are claimed as specialized bodies in fighting against political bribery and corruption. And they also claim engaging in anti-corruption activities in Indonesian context. But the questions here, why Indonesia is still perceived as one of the corrupt countries based on the Transparency International report, and why corruption scandals in Indonesia are much more likely to flourish over the years. So based on this background, I think this is very, very important to discuss the inside fact why those concerns happen in Indonesia. First of all, I will give a short overview of a corruption statistic from Indonesia. In advance, I want to say that the existence of new anti-corruption regulations and anti-corruption bodies in Indonesia do not guarantee corruption scandal decrease in Indonesia. Let's see the table 1. In the table 1, it presents number of corruption cases which are handled by Indonesia's Corruption Eradication Commissions. It presents case happenings from 2004 to 2018. I think these periods because of perception, social perception. Some people argue that Indonesian Corruption Eradication Commission since 2019 until present is contaminated by political interest. For example, many intimidations against such institution, investigation technique and approach. So because of this, the statistics present here from 2004 to 2018. As we can see in that table, in terms of preliminary investigation, it shows that number of corruption behavior increased dramatically from 20 to 164 cases. So during that period, I mean 2004 to 2018, the highest number of cases reached a peak at 2018 by 164 cases. If you look at these changes, the character of Indonesians holding a bureaucratic power for being corrupt is very clear to be seen. Of course, there is unspoken irony if you look at these figures in emerging new corruption scandal with new suspects from high-ranking Indonesian bureaucrats. These changes are also shown at all the categories in that table. In fact, as I mentioned, Indonesia has 3 big anti-corruption bodies. However, the scope and complexity of corruption in Indonesia is still immense. I want to say here that, like other corrupt countries, bureaucratic corruption or improbity in Indonesia is the end product of illegal lobbying process. Lobbying is the practice of trying to influence political decisions through lobbyists who act as representative of another person or interest group. Such lobbying process mostly committed by villain actors who have greater controlling capacity of public administrations. This is not necessarily over dramatized or simply by view on the corruption case happenings in Indonesian's bureaucracy. But in the practice, the idea of lobbying is a lot more pronounced in the realms of unscrupulous echelons of bureaucracies. So what is regarded as a corruption in social context might not taken as a corruption in another. Of course, it is also depending on regime types or community norms. As a result from such contextualized corrupt behavior, bureaucracy no longer runs effectively and efficiently. In other words, Indonesian bureaucracy in the end only become a potential vehicle for corrupt ruler or a group of individuals. This is not to say that the whole bureaucracies of Indonesia are plated to deals, but this is the fact. They are just systems of government operated by a clever fraud masterminds which is intended to rob the state's resources. Practically in Indonesia, nothing can be done without bribing the consent officials. In essence, it has become a standard practice in most departments in Indonesian bureaucracies. And a businessman cannot expect to obtain a license, for example, without satisfying the consent officials. This is irony. Of course, this is irony. But this is the fact. Interestingly, in Indonesia, payments are also required simply to obtain application form or a signature, for example related to obtaining approval for a building plan, obtaining a job in government department, or managing transfer to preferable locations. In Indonesian society, there is splendid consensus, however, that any illicit behavior flourishing under bureaucratic administrations is detrimental act that must be tackled. They know it. They know that peoples in authority illicitly use their power to benefit themselves, their families, friends. Um, uh, uh, such act is called a corruption, right? However, in practice, not all people can avoid lot of fraud that goes on governmental systems. Corrupt behavior in Indonesian bureaucracy actually is not merely caused by bureaucratic interests in certain situations. Rather, it is primarily triggered by political interventions from governmental outsiders. The acceptance of a bribe by bureaucrat depends on the size of the bribe itself and the cost. Um, in that respect, I think um, a wicked control from the organizational outsider slaughter bureaucracy's perceptions in combating any maladministrations or fraudulent behaviors. I want to say here that Indonesian bureaucrats at some point do not have adequate power to deal with any malevolent interests or pressures coming from governmental outsiders. However, the problem become worse, right? Become worse if a source of a systemic corruption is strongly tied by an agreement among high echelons of bureaucracies and those corrupt outsiders. In Indonesia, the likelihood of individual, even though they are a best individual, to be bribed and blind by little stimulus is relatively high, particularly if they are working at the corrupt organizational environment. This is a kind of bureaucratic corruption focused on demand by looking at the calculation of risk and reward. It is for some people also well known as a concept of social interactions or network externalities, in which the behavior of peer, colleague, label social pressure seem also important in explaining and understanding observed corruption in Indonesia. Of course, this is distinctively worrisome when a standard of public officials' morality are deplorably questioned. What happened in Indonesia is to push us to understand the corruption as a social practice or institutions. Not just a sum of individual corrupt acts, and acknowledge its political character as well. If we look at the previous table, principally and ethically, the lower echelons Indonesians are positioned as servants to obey a stronger individual within bureaucracy. There is no resistance from such lower echelons, even though the government funds or assets were squandered and pilfered. This is too far. So this is too far to say that the move from a tiresome degradation to accountability could be achieved by Indonesia. Uniquely, people who are in power, either local, central government, view strategic governmental positions is regarded as a placement area of family members or close friends having low self-control. In this circumstance, they met together, they form power together. I can say this is such a relationship based on malicious principle and interest. In I will give you some good examples. In a certain local government, the local leader in this position, she was a governor. She tried to create a dynasty system. She pushed her family members and relatives to sit at legislative, executive, and judicative bodies. And quite often, she recruited people to join in her dynasty systems. As a consequence, those recruited people must be ready at the time to stand for the governance and other elites in such dynasty systems. In Indonesia, primary associations are still dominant. Family, kinship, neighborhood, ethnic origins, and religious affiliations are the associational form that have the first and greatest call on individual loyalties. And this political dominance in Indonesia over bureaucratic values contribute to create a style of administrative behavior, and that is why a person who asks a favor, for example, for a successful bid from outsider belonging to his association, does not consider his act unethical. So based on these situations, it is indisputable that the trickery associated with illegality and corrupt behavior would be secure if the bureaucracy's leader if the bureaucracy's leader and their association and their all bureaucratic subordinate act as one packet unit. And then fear, sense, embarrassment no longer apply for some Indonesian bureaucrats. A government official often collect a bribe for providing permit, license, for giving passage to customs, or for prohibiting the entry business competitors. And in that case, I can say, as I said, a lobbying is often act as instrument of influence to relax the rules and gain privilege. And this is what happened in Indonesia. The number of people involved in such situations is unknown, but the several people may be implicated. Right? It is not an individual act again, but may endemic as the influence spreads through the organizations. At some points, I want to say about Indonesia. Corrupt rulers often treat their organization's assets as a source of personal wealth. For example, spending fund on the luxury goods, extravagance as they see fit. Many corrupt rulers secretly transfer public funds into hidden personal number bank account in foreign countries. Drawing. If I look at some academic reference, drawing on the principle of routine activity theory, for example, a crime pattern theory. It states that offenders become aware of a criminal opportunity because they engage in normal legitimate activities. In Indonesian case, daily activities in daily activities, bureaucrats create convergence. What I can say, good environment that can push people to commit corrupt behaviors. They try to commit such acts together, with the same malicious interest. So what happened in Indonesia might be one of possible answers why Indonesian controls have no power to deter corrupt behaviors. So under these situations, the occurrence of fraudulent behavior, especially corruptions, which are considered as organized crime, may no longer be associated with organizational weaknesses. This situation has enlightened us about why the act of fraud or misconduct remain undetected or solved. I think to deal with corrupt behavior with Indonesian's case or any type of fraud act, a clear understanding of inherent organizational structures and behaviors of the fraudster is required because such concerns provide the grounds for developing better prevention strategies. So this is my thoughts about Indonesian corruptions. Again, this that what I said here. This is a part of our empirical studies in Indonesian bureaucracies. Thank you.